Hello, my name is Austin, and today I want to talk about accessibility statements. An accessibility statement is basically a little page that you can put on your website going over how accessible your website is, and what the process is that's in place for when there is an issue relating to accessibility. So generally, what people will do is they will write on the statement, we're striving for, let's say WCAG 2.1 AA compliance, and this is a partially compliant site. Generally, you want to use the word partially compliant or, some type of aspect that doesn't say this is fully compliant because, obviously a website's constantly being updated and changed. And even if it what did meet every WCAG standard, there could be an update or something that throws that off. So I think from a legal standpoint, it's better to say you're looking at some type of partial compliance, although you can be shooting internally for full compliance, obviously. Now, in addition to that, the other aspect that's really key for these accessibility statements is to have clear and defined process for how to deal with an accessibility error. For example, if somebody encounters an accessibility barrier on a website, the first thing they're going to do is contact you. And if you have some process in place that you could go over and say, thank you so much for contacting me, we have a process where we'll work through the issue with you, and we'll have a timeline of, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks to get it fixed, depending on the severity of the issue. And whatever it is, having some timeline and some process in place is really important. This is especially true when it comes to accessibility lawsuits. In fact, there have been accessibility lawsuits where the judge has said, hold up everybody, there's an accessibility statement on this website where there's a process laid out. Did the plaintiff go through and request a change, or did they just immediately file a lawsuit and not go through the process laid out in the accessibility statement? The judge will want them to go through that process because that avoids the legal system, and it's there for, both parties to be able to work out the differences and remediate the site so it's accessible. So if you want to avoid lawsuits, having an accessibility statement on your website is really critical. And in addition, being able to clearly spell out who the point of contact is and the accessibility standards that you're shooting for are all really helpful, along with really talking about if you have any personal connection to accessibility in your company, if that's a core value, being able to express that can be helpful as well. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of show some demos from the W3C. And they have a couple tips, on accessibility. So I'll kind of just mainly show you the demos there, and then I'll show you some accessibility statements on different websites, and you can check them out. So now we are on the W3C page. This link is in the description of the video. And what it does is it goes over how to develop an accessibility statement. Some of the key things to keep in mind when developing an accessibility statement is that you really want to make sure that you describe, the level of access that you're trying to provide and the process by which someone who encounters an accessibility barrier can use to remediate that barrier. In addition, it can be helpful to mention the specific web browser that you're testing with and screen reading software so they know about the compatibility. If you're interested, at the bottom of this page, there's a generate an accessibility statement. I will put this link in the description too. And what it does is it actually allows you to make an accessibility statement for your own website. And it goes through all the different questions. And as you fill it out, it will basically generate a statement that you could use for your website. So definitely check this resource out. So now I'm going to show you, here is like the minimal accessibility statement. It basically talks about the compliance level that they're trying to meet for this website. They mention that it's partially compliant, and they provide some ways of contacting if an accessibility barrier is encountered. So what we can do here is go to the web accessibility for American Airlines, and we can see this is very similar to the sample statement the W3C shows us, where they talk about their accessibility goals, how they're going for 2.0 compliance, and they're trying to meet all the guidelines, and that they are, the website is periodically tested, and they're doing the best they can to meet this standard, and that they have different things for contacting. They give a phone number for specific issues if there's any barrier that is noticed on the site. So providing these things can help prevent lawsuits, because now people know that you're striving to meet a WCAG standard that you have set, and they also know have a way of contacting if they encounter an accessibility barrier. And if a plaintiff just went on, encountered a barrier, and didn't contact the website first, that would be brought up. This kind of covers a minimal accessibility statement and how it can be beneficial, because you're providing a way to contact if there's an accessibility barrier that's found, and you are also really laying out the accessibility standards that you're trying to meet. The W3C also has a complete accessibility statement. This statement is a little bit more detailed. It goes over, a lot of different aspects when it comes to testing. So you can see here they're talking about the technical specifications. They talk about specific browsers that they test with and things like that. They go into a little bit more about how formal complaints can be handled and within 5 business days. So they're really laying out a process that people can go through, which means that the more you lay out the process, the less likely you are to encounter an accessibility lawsuit, because people who encounter these barriers will go through the process with you and remediate, assuming that the process is reasonable and pretty expedient, and that the majority of your site is accessible. So what I want to talk about here now is looking at AAA Insurance, because they have a statement that actually is pretty complete in many ways to the W3C statement. You can see here they talk about the accessibility that they're trying to meet, how they're looking for WCAG 2.1 compliance, AA, and that's what they're striving to meet. They also talk about the different testing that they do and what is recommended. So they talk about JAWS and using Internet Explorer or NVDA in Firefox, or Mac users using VoiceOver in Safari or VoiceOver in Chrome. So they're giving you a lot of details about the best experience you can have with the screen reader. So that can be really helpful. In addition, you also have a lot of information regarding the feedback and how you can, if you encounter an issue with the site, where you can go to contact and submit a problem. This AudioEye toolbar is an overlay, and I'm not a big fan of overlays, so I would say that I don't think that is the best solution, but at the same time, they are providing a lot of details about it, and they are providing ways for you to report if there is an issue. So I'd imagine they would get a lot of reports if this overlay was not accessible, or if there were other accessibility issues with the AAA Insurance website. I hope you found this information helpful. Thank you so much for watching.